So chromosomal level basis of inheritance. At this point, what we are looking at is we are not looking at the gene level now. We are looking at it at chromosome level. So we'll be looking at the dysfunctions, the abnormalities that happens at the chromosomal level. Let's go. This just shows you a view of what chromosome looks like when they are condensed. And of course, you know that condensed chromosome is condensed. When it is not condensed, chromosome is actually made up of DNA and histone protein. When it is condensed, we call it chromosome. When it is uncondensed, we call it chromatin. And I call it chromatine. Chromatin, uncondensed chromosome. So it's the same thing. It's just like when water is water, you call it water. When it is solid, you call it ice. So different, the same content, the same composition, different terminology based on their texture at that time. So what you see, all right, so the dots, the yellow things you see here just signify location of a gene. And location of a gene on the chromosome is called loci, or locus if it's singular. Now, when you see a chromosome that seems to have the same size, like I'm going to use my annotation now. When you see a chromosome that have the same size, like this chromosome now, and this chromosome now you see that they seem to have the same size, they seem to have the same shape, they particularly seem to have the same gene at the same locus. So that kind of chromosome, we call them homologous chromosome. Of course, you learned that in meiosis already. So the chromosome have duplicated. So each chromosome have two sister chromatids, each with a copy of genes. This provides a visual demonstration that genes, which is what Mendel called the factor of inheritance, are segment of DNA located along chromosome. Like I told you, a segment or a sequence of DNA that transmit a particular, that code for a particular trait is what we call gene, right? Let's go. I will just go from here, but if I will just do a quick review of it, remember, just like what we just discussed now, we've looked at this slide before in previous chapter as well. This is maternal cell, is going to go through mitotic, it's going to go through interphase, produce go through meiosis 1, meiosis 2, and now it has produced the egg or the sperm, as the case may be. You know, meiosis, we call it reductional division because it reduces a diploid cell from its diploid state, 46 chromosome, to haploid state, 23 chromosome. And then the 23 chromosomes or the haploid cells, which we call the gametes, they are going to fertilize, the sperm will fertilize the egg, and now is going to form a zygote, which is going to be a diploid organism, diploid cell, which is what you have here now. All right, so when you talk about hereditary, we are talking about genes. All right, now hereditary unit, the hereditary component, that's what Mendel referred to as hereditary factor gene. All right, around 1902, Sutton and Boveri and others independently noted these parallels and began to develop the chromosomal theory of inheritance. I'll talk about that as we go. Now, the first solid evidence associated with specific gene with a specific chromosome came in the early 1900s from the work of Thomas Hunt. His early experiment provided convincing evidence that chromosomes are the location of Mendel's heritable factor. So all they are saying is that chromosome is where genes are located. Does that make sense? All right. Let's go. Those are just the experiment. I didn't talk about it. Now, I'll pick things I need to emphasize on here for you. So when you say Y type, what do we mean? It means normal. When you say mutant means it is not the normal, it has been mutated. There has been changes from the normal. So this is mutant, meaning that mutation has happened. This is Y type, meaning that normal. So when you say normal gene, it means Y type, Y type. When you say mutant, it means that is the gene that is new, that has been changed. Does that make sense? So for these flies now, the Y type have red eye, which is the normal, but the mutants have white eye. So there may not be problem with white eye. Everything may be okay with it. It may even be a good trait, but it's not the normal, it's a mutant. Mutation has happened to it. All right. I will just skip this. That's the same thing we talked about in terms of mating and what they produce, right? Dominant gene, all of that. So I'm just going to go. Um, so when Morgan did his experiment, the reason that the white-eyed mutant allele must be located on X chromosome. So figure that it's located on X chromosome. Now, females have two X chromosomes, while males have one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. So we usually say that males are hemizygous. I'll write that here. We say that males are hemizygous. Hemizygous means that males don't have two set of chromosomes. We two same sets. We have half of each. So hemi half. So we have males have one X, one Y. No two Ys, no two X. All right. So most Morgan's findings supported the chromosome theory of inheritance. Let's go. All right. Yeah, these are the same thing we've talked about. So I'll just go. When I see things that it's just talking about law of segregation, law of independent assortment, which we did last week. All right. So key thing is that Morgan in his experiment deduced, he discovered also, he confirmed that uh, the chromosomal level of inheritance, that was it based on his experiment. Now, I will talk about one thing before I go continue, just to not confuse you. Now, it may be like a reminder now, but there is a kind of chromosome. In our system, we have 46 chromosomes, right? So we have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs of chromosomes, right? So we have 46 chromosomes. Now, out of that 46, 44, we call them autosomes. In code, those are the regular body chromosomes. Then the other two, we call them sex chromosomes. So in female, the sex chromosome in females, of course, is XX. And the male chromosome, the male sex chromosome is XY. So please take note of this so that as I'm talking, you will have this knowledge in your mind. So the 44, we call them autosomes. So if you have ever heard of autosomal disorder, that is where it came from. That the disorder has to do with chromosome number 1 to 44 or position 1 to 22, which will be in pairs, right? If you look at the karyotype. Now, so humans and other mammals have two types of sex chromosome, a larger X chromosome and a smaller Y chromosome. A person with two X chromosomes usually develops anatomically as the female, and the male will be the will have XY, and all right. Excuse me. Let's go. Um, okay. So this explains the same thing we've talked about. You see 44XX. This is what you are going to see in a sperm. Or sperm can be 44X. Oh, sorry. I was talking from the base. So if you look at here, a male have 44XY, which is the male configuration, and the female have 44XX, which is the female configuration. All right, so that means there are 44 autosomes here, and then X and Y chromosome, which are the sex chromosome, and then 44 autosomes here, then X and X chromosome, which are the female sex chromosome. Now, when this male undergo meiosis and want to give birth, want to produce sperm, there are two chances that can happen. When the reductional division happen, 22 autosomes can pair with one X, and then this will be a sperm that will give rise to a female child. Then it can also be 22Y, which will be a potential sperm that can give rise to a male child. Now, but for females, when these divide, it can either be 22X or another 22X. So we just take it as just one 22X, because if it's 22 with this one, it will be 22X. If it's 22 with the second one, it's going to be 22X. All right. So this person can end up giving birth to it. So it can be, this person can end up giving birth to a child, and the child can be this coupled with this, which will be a female, or it can be this coupled with this, which will be a male. All right. So that is the system for uh for the XY system, which is what we are focusing on. Of course, there are other systems which is not a priority this evening. All right. So don't worry about those. All right, short segment at the end of the Y chromosome are homologous with the X. You want to take note of that. And that allows the two to behave like homologous during meiosis in males. All right, so the X and the Y have segments that are related. In mammals, the gene on the Y chromosome called XRY, we call it sex determining region. So the XRY is sex region Y, sex determining region on the Y. It's responsible for development of testes in an embryo. You want to just take note of that. Now, a gene that is located on either sex chromosome is called sex-linked gene. That's why I have to explain the X and Y carefully. So the gene that is located on sex chromosome is called sex-linked gene. Now, genes on the Y chromosome will now be specifically called Y-linked gene. And the gene on the X chromosome will be called X-linked gene. And it continues also that if there is a disorder, we can say it is sex disorder, sex-linked disorder. We can say it is X-linked disorder. We can say it is Y-linked disorder. All right? So the issue is about knowing if a disorder has to do with X or Y, or it has to do with autosomes. So some disorder we call it autosomal disorder. Some disorder we call it sex-linked disorders. And then we could be specific and say Y-linked disorder, X-linked disorder. So inheritance of X-linked disorder, X-linked genes. X chromosomes have genes for many characters unrelated to sex, of course, because they are just X linked. Many Y-linked genes are related to sex determination because that's the gender that that's the link Y that determines the male gender, or absence of it determines the female gender. So X-linked genes follow a specific pattern of inheritance. For a recessive X-linked trait to be expressed, please listen. I use this analogy sometimes. Now, please listen to me. I have one phone, just one phone. I don't intend to lose the phone, but if I lose this phone, it means I have no phone. I have lost my phone, no phone. So if my wife wants to reach me, she won't be able to reach me because I have no phone. But if I have two phones and I lose one of them, will it be right if I say I've lost my phones? I've lost all my phones? No, that would not be right because I lost a phone, but I still have a phone. So put the analogy in your mind as I go ahead and talk about this, then I will link it to it. So X-linked genes follow a specific pattern of inheritance. For a recessive X-linked trait to be expressed, a female needs 2 copies of the allele. So what does that mean? It means for me to say that if I have 2 phones, for me to say I have my phones with me, I must have the 2 phones with me. If I have one of the phone with me, then I don't have all my phones with me. So what we call X-linked disorder, X-linked, recessive or recessive, it means that 2 genes must be affected before the person can show the trait. And a very good example that you cannot forget is for sickle cell. For sickle cell disorder, before someone can have the trait, the person must be SS. If the person is AS, the person cannot have the trait. The person will just be carrier. The person is not going to show any symptoms. So it's the same concept here. There are some of them we call cystic fibrosis. I'll still talk about them more. But for a recessive, we call it recessive. Now, why do we call it recessive? It's not dominant. And if you remember, oh, very good. You remember last week when I was talking to you about dominant traits, dominant genes? I told you that for dominant, it just has to be like AA. Or let me write it the right way, right? It has to be just this. This is for dominant. If something is like this, the color, let's say this is color for, let's say like this is tall. Let me use this for tall. So if something is this guy will still be tall. This guy will still be tall. The reason he's tall is because, sorry, I have my caps on. So the reason this guy is tall is because he has a dominant gene there. But the lower t, this upper lowercase t, is silenced because it's not a dominant trait. So if somebody needs to be short, the person must have 2 copies of the dominant trait. So if the person have this, for instance, can it be short? No. If the person have this, can it be short? No. For the person to be short, it has to be this. This person will be short. What does that mean? For somebody to be short, they must carry the 2 recessive traits. If they don't carry the 2 recessive traits, then they will be tall because the presence of one dominant trait will make the phenotype to resemble the dominant trait, the dominant gene. So for somebody to express a recessive trait, the person must carry 2 genes. So that means the person must get one from father and one from mother. And I was telling you last week that's part of the reason marriages between family members are discouraged, that's again part of it. A major reason there, because usually some traits, recessive traits, are very rare, but family members may carry the same recessive traits. So if they carry the gene, then if they are going to have children together, they will likely contribute the gene to the child, and then a recessive trait will now become expressive in the child. So that's key reasons, one of the reasons why those are discouraged. So look at this. X-linked gene follow a specific pattern of inheritance. For a recessive X-linked, what must happen? 2 copies of that allele must be present. If 1 copy is present, then it will not reflect. As long as uppercase T is here, the guy will be tall. But for the guy to be short, both has to be lowercase. So a female needs 2 copies of the allele. That's for female, because female have 2 X's. But for X, again, for X-linked disorder, now this is where I want to use my analogy now. For female, this is the rule. But for male, he only needs 1. Do you know why? That was why the issue of, I have 1 X as a male. So if I lose my phone, I've lost all my phone. But female will need to lose the 2 phones. I mean, female, right, have 2 phones. So they will need to lose the 2 phones before they can say they've lost all their phone. So me, I'm going to say, if I lose my phone, I've lost all my phone, right? But if I have 2 phones, or if you have 2 phones and you lose 1, have you lost all your phone? No. So a female, if 1 X is affected, the other X, they will still be fine, no symptoms. But for a female to express a recessive disorder, it must be 2 of the alleles that are affected. But for a male, if 1 is affected, all is affected. But for female, if 1 is affected, not all is affected. And all must be affected before the trait will show. So in males, 1 just needs to be affected because it's just 1 X, and that will be all. In female, because females have 2 X's, 2 X's have to be affected. That will be all. So the concept is this: for recessive X-linked trait, all the X must be affected. Unfortunately, males only have 1 X. Female have 2. The 2 have to be affected before the person can show the symptoms. If it makes sense to you, please give me a thumbs up. Good job. Good. Thank you. Good. So that is the concept of recessive trait. And is a rule for every recessive X-linked disorder, females will need 2 to be affected so that their all will be affected. Males will also need 1 to be affected, which is their all, because males only have 1 X. And again, males are homozygous. X-linked recessive disorder are much more common in males than in female. That is logical, because only 1 X. So if a mother, now that tells you that, if I think I can get to this now, listen to me very carefully. X-linked disorder, if there's a problem that only affects X-linked, X chromosome, can a female give it to her son? Yes or no? I just want to see yes or no on the chart. Listen to the question again. If a disorder only affects X chromosome, X-linked on the sex chromosome, X-linked, can a mother give that disorder to her son? Yes or no? Okay, I'm looking at the responses. Yes or no? A disorder have X-linked. Very good. A mother can give it to her son. But can a father give it to his son? Can a father transmit X-linked disorder to his son? No. Thank you. A father cannot transmit X-linked disorder to his son because he's not going to give his son X anyway. Thank you. He only give his son Y. So that tells you, on the other hand, that every Y-linked disorder is going to go from every father to a son. All right, I'm going very fast now. That makes sense to me. Every Y-linked disorder, and you should put that in your notes. A father cannot transmit X-linked disorder to his son, but he will transmit it to all his female child or all his female children. The only thing is this: if the mother does not carry the disorder, then no child will have the disorder. The father will just give it to them. They will be carriers. They will not express any traits, because except if the mother also carries it and give it to them. But a mother can of course transmit X-linked disorder to his son, but a father cannot transmit it to his son. A father can, all male child of a father that have Y-linked disorder will have the disorder, but no female will be affected, of course. So let's go. We are doing great. Now, okay, we've talked about, okay, let me just show you this quickly as we move. So if you look at this now, let me get my annotation. If you look at this now, this is a mother here, and this is a father. Of course, the fact that this is shaded tells you that this man is sick, and the reason he's sick is carrying this N is an X-linked recessive disorder. So he's carrying an X-linked recessive disorder, meaning that the disorder only affects X. But the fact that it has just one X, that means all its X is affected. And for a recessive, take note, recessive. For a recessive disorder, all has to be affected. And since it only has one, so all its X is affected. Now, this father is sick. This father is sick. Now, by the time this father is going to have his child, you see the sperm split into XN and Y. Then this woman also split into this. So you have this and this. The father, this, and this. Now, by the time they react together, you have this child and this child. So the father did not, you notice, these are the sons. You notice that no son carried that disorder. Why? Because the disorder have to do with X. And father don't give X to sons. They only give Y to sons. So you see that no son carried this disorder because the disorder have to do with X. If the disorder were to be on the X on female, there's chances that the male can have it 50%. But the fact that it's not on the female, the male have 0% chances of having that disorder. But what did you notice? All the females got it from the father. But because female are not hemizygous, they have two copies. They are homozygous. They have two copies of X. Only the X that the father gave them is affected. This is the affected X, affected X. So we say they are carriers. They are not affected. They are carriers. They are not sick. They are only carriers. Does that make sense? So they are carrying the disorder. They are carrying the gene, but they are not bearing the symptoms. They need to have two affected to have symptoms. This father has symptoms. This father is sick. He has symptoms, but these children are carriers. So the best that can happen when a father carry an X-linked disorder, recessive, is just for the female children to become carriers. That's the best that can happen. The only problem will be if this female child or female children now marries a man that have the disorder. That's the only problem. So look at this scenario. So this girl now is here and is going to marry this man. Now, what do you notice? You will notice that no male this father cannot give it to a male child because the father, of course, is not a Y-linked disorder. So you see, this is the sperm, this is the sperm here, this is the egg, this is the egg. What has happened? These two, this and this, you notice that, sorry, this is an error, okay? This is supposed to be this. This is an error. So you see this and this person is perfectly healthy, no sickness at all. This and this, healthy, no sickness at all. Healthy, healthy. When you come here, this and this, what has happened? This guy is carrying the disorder from his mother, from her mother. And then this guy also is carrying the disorder from her mother. So this person is affected, sick. This person is sick. This person is just a carrier. So we call this lady, we are going to call this girl a carrier. Number 3 is a carrier. Number 4 is affected, sick. Number 1 is LD, normal. Number 2 is LD, normal. Now, when you come here, this is a woman that is a carrier. So we call this woman carrier. She doesn't have the disorder. She's only carrying the gene that is affected. So we call them carrier. This is the person that is affected. Affected means sick. So this person is affected. Oh, now, and it just affected, it's an X-linked disorder. You can see that, recessive. Now, this woman is a carrier. They got married. There's a sperm segregated so that it can obey the law of segregation. Now, look at it here. This guy is a carrier. Number 1 is a carrier. Because you see, both mother and parent, both the mother is a carrier, the father is affected. So the first child, this guy is a carrier. The second child, of course, has chances of having a 50%, but he doesn't have it. The mother gave him the healthy X. Unfortunately, this mother gave this to this child, and the father also gave this to this child. Of course, every female from this family will be a carrier on the minimum. But this female was unfortunate. Number 3 got the disease, so is actually affected. And number 4, unfortunately for him as well, he had gotten the X that is affected from the mother. So he also became sick. So this disorder have 50% chance of happening in the children. 50%, of course, 50% for because the male is affected, or the female children will at least be a carrier. All right, let's go. All right, some disorder caused by recessive alleles on the X chromosome in humans. Color blindness is part of it, mostly common. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, hemophilia is recessive disorder. All right, so I'm going to take a little pause here and then start the recording on the next.